computer. Yeah, Mary, if you'd like to kick off and set up the why we're all here, that would be great. So if everyone's ready on your side, is anyone else to come in?
Okay, good evening. Are you all good to go, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening all, and welcome to this evening's session. Last Saturday evening, we actually had an in-person session with James McConville, Simone, Kevin and Helena, and they're from a company called ACT Studios, which is Accelerating Change Together, and they're a non-profit or a social enterprise from Ballina. And we secured ACT a few months ago through funding from the government account in Hubble. And the focus of the project really is to plan for Inishturk from now until 2050. Like we said this last Saturday, not to think of 2050, it's the journey from here to 2050. And 2050 is really the destination, but the journey starts now. And it's planning from now until 2050, and it's planning in the short, medium and long term to sustain the future of Inishturk. And Inishturk, I suppose, like many rural communities, is facing challenges of population decline, employment opportunities and a lack of housing. And it's now we must find a solution to these ongoing challenges, or else they will be ever present in our future. And in reality, the overall future of the island fully relies on addressing issues like these presented to us now. And as I say, we engage with James McConville, Kevin, Simone and Helena to help us on this journey. And really that's the bones of it, and it's a journey like this really warrants good participation and engagement from the immediate community and the diaspora and any other agency or people that's out there that's willing to come on board with us. And on that note, I would also like to welcome Moira Inwaylan from Pornanilon and Mary Helena from Inishturk. They're here this evening to give us a talk on the new leader program 2023 to 2027. So anyone that wants to wait on the call following the workshop with James McConville and his team are welcome to do so. So I'll hand you over now to James to kickstart this evening's section. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mary. I'm going to just try and remove the spotlight here and see if I come in the screen. But yeah, like Mary said, my name is James McConville, and I'm from Accelerating Change Together, which is a social enterprise set up to accelerate the green transition on the island of Ireland. And we are delighted to be working with Inishturk Community Club in helping facilitate like a community 2050 vision for the island. I'm going to share my screen and maybe just let me know if this works. 1 second. Can you see the screen okay now?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So tonight's workshop is the first of two, and the name of it is Telling the Story of Inishturk, and that's really why we're here tonight, is for everyone to in the audience and participating online to really tell the story of their Inishturk, to really understand the challenges and opportunities that exist today, and as we plan a future, understand where we are at currently. So just to say that we've been here before, and this is an image, a lovely image Anne provided of from the Community Futures in 2014, which is done with on the island. It's done by the kids on the island, and you can see here different potentials for an Inishturk island for 2024. And the great thing about some of the proposals here, some of them have been realized with the increased passenger ferry numbers. Like within the Community Futures, they talk about the community club and upgrading the community club, and the things like that have been happening with the community club, especially with the solar panels, which are going to be installed or are being installed in the next month or two, Mary, or they're going to be going online this year, and the gym with the next to the football pitch. But as we said, as Mary aptly put, this vision is not about the destination, it's about the journey. And it reminds us of a quote with the idea of a society grows great when all men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit. And this is kind of the idea of setting up this vision. It's the idea of we all love Inishturk, and how do we continue to preserve what the things that we love about the island going forward. And in terms of the process that we're doing, we're currently at the first workshop, which is to tell them the story of Inishturk, which will involve this hopefully brief presentation, and then an opportunity, two-part workshop where we're going to discuss the challenges and opportunities of Inishturk, but also the potential futures for Inishturk. And this is where we get to have some expansive thinking and think about how we could actually propose different futures for Inishturk. In September, we will return with the Visualizing Futures workshop, where we'll take all those learnings and all the input from the workshops, and then almost repackage and present them back to the group, and almost let people critique the different futures that have been proposed as a result of the first workshop. This will then feed into in October a consultation report, which will kind of align. This is where the island wants to go towards 2050, based off all the input. And the report is able to raise awareness of Inishturk's 2050 ambitions, hopefully support capital funding applications, because it will show funders that this is an island that's taken their future seriously and has a kind of collective community-led vision for that. And this hopefully will unlock additional funding for an Inishturk 2050 master plan, which can accompany that, so we can see how we can get to that. So this presentation is really, the aim of this presentation is to kind of like lay out the stall of what Inishturk currently is, how we've got here, its past and its present, and then today we'll be able to discuss more of its present and potential futures. So in terms of the context, Inishturk and its neighbouring island, so Inishturk currently, it's an asterisk, like 62 people has been the number that's been floated as a permanent residence on the island, 6 kilometres squared island, and its neighbouring island is the mainland, and it's got over 7 million people on it, a lot more densely populated than the island. And we use this a bit cheeky and jar to put two islands next to each other, but using the mainland as a reference point when we give different facts and figures about the island, that kind of reference point will be the mainland in terms of how those numbers sit in context. In terms of the island itself, Inishturk, it's got its highest elevation point is over just shy of 190 meters. It actually sits between two rock formations, which creates that elevation of mud rock, sandstone, and tuff. It's unlike the islands around. It actually has a freshwater lake on top, which gives Inishturk water independence. And we'll return to this idea of independence later on in terms of the island. Wind-wise, and this is a map from SEIA of the wind mapping of Ireland. You can see where Inishturk sits is like in that dark red area. And when you map it over the island, you see even the windiest parts of the island. So it is a very windy place. In terms of vegetation, this map is of Ireland if there was no human intervention, and it shows the different species breakdown of the island. The majority of the mainland would have been covered in a mixture of oak and hazel and birch. But where Inishturk sits over here is actually classed as a coastal heath. And that coastal heath is actually more traditional, and it's called the Wild Boar Island. But the coastal heath would support different animals like the corncrake. And in terms of it's currently as a proposed natural heritage area, and in terms of the sea is a special area of conservation. You can see in this proposed natural heritage area, there's areas of like the centre of Inishturk where they're not classed within it, but it's something to be cognizant of, because this may have impacts on a vision going forward, what that would actually mean for the island if it was a proposed natural heritage area. Like we say, the wildlife, it's got a mixture of puffins. We have 3 pairs of corncrake according to the current census, and then great marine wildlife as well. On and off for about 4,000 years, the island has had some form of habitation, but there's remnants back to the 7th century BC, and the natural harbour at Port Doon would have been most logically where people would have kind of entered the island from. And you can see in the early remnants, when you look at the historic environment view of where the archaeological remains are, they are scattered amongst the island. And later on, when the British arrived, you can see, and this is the Napoleonic signal tower, you can see what they did in terms of building a port pier on the islands around the 1820s. And this then led to a kind of standardization, or a kind of adding kind of like an order to the island in terms of like land rights and setting out where, you know, borders are. And you can see where the commonage was established, which is the majority of the area on the islands between the shareholders. And then the idea of striping and I think if I'm right, Mary, they call the inside of the island, as they call it, the inner wall of the island, where the different private land holdings are. The island itself is split up into different townlands across the island, Craggy, Ballyhere, Mountain Common townlands. And prior to what we'll talk about, the shock event of the famine, it was a subsistence farming that supported the island. And you can even see, and these are beautiful maps. There's Bing Maps. We were looking at different maps of the island, and Bing Maps has some wonderful high-level satellite imagery. And you can even see the potato bed legacy. When you zoom in, you can see how the landscape was cultivated this very day. And you can even see sometimes it goes outside the actual the boundary as well. With the Curras, you can see lots of them dotted around the island today. And the idea of pre-famine, there was 577 inhabitants recorded. So this island supports 577 people. And then a shock event happened, and we all, we know what we're referring to in terms of the famine. And the famine hit the west of Ireland particularly hard. And you can see here, like, over 30% of the population that died during the famine, and most people moved to urban centres on the island in that same period. And when you take the data from the CSO, you can see during the famine period, the mainland had a drop of almost a quarter. But on the island, there was almost a 70% drop in population. And post that period, Inishturk continued to develop. In 1885, there was the primary schools constructed. In 1987, there was the electrification of the island. Runa Pier was also constructed in 1987. The harbour restoration, 1988 to 89. And telephone arrived in 1990. The community club where most people are sitting in was first built in 1993, and then the additional extension in 2013. The ferry service arrived in 1997. Like prior to that, like it was kind of an ad hoc service with like fishing boats. The healthcare centre arrived in 2003. The harbour was upgraded in 2005. The GA pitch was upgraded in 2010, and then the changing rooms club, which we talked about in the community futures, 2012. New playground, which I was out there on the weekend and almost ended it all on the zip line, but it was great fun. One of the best placed playgrounds I've ever been at. Arrived in 2022, and we've all been talking about the purpose-built, wonderful self-catering tourist accommodation arrives in 2023. And the helipad, which I've learned from over the weekend, is probably one of the most state-of-the-art helipads on the island as well, because it's built to the highest spec. So Inishturk today, it's very well connected, and if you see the transport network currently, like it's connected obviously with Runa and Pier, but on stormy weather it goes to Cleggan, and there's a connection there for post and different things and waste. And you know how it taps into going to Dublin or Galway. And there's it's a well-connected island, and there was obviously a push in the last few years for increased ferry services as a must. And it was noted that it was the Mayo Island future sustainability. So it was noted that the sustainability of the island is linked to its connectivity. And this campaign led to increased ferry services on the island. I think from June, there'll be like 3 daily services back and forth. So between that and the helipad, it's increased in its connectivity. The community club, where most people are sitting right now, it's got lots of different services available. The community facilities in terms of the council house, the health centre, the post office, and the national school and the church. hospitality, you've got the Cahir View restaurant, and then you have the tea rooms. You have your play facilities from the GAA pitch and the playground. You have the water filtration plant, so you've got your water independence. You've got your broadband and your phone tower, the waste collection point for recycling, and the ESB diesel power station as well. Very importantly, you're connected in within the Wild Atlantic Way, the large infrastructure tourism network along the west coast. When you go on the website for what to do in Inishturk, you're just overwhelmed with, like, there's 10 different things to do on the island, just even listed on the website. And you've got wonderful events, the sheep show and the ram fair, which we'll talk about later. You've got beautiful looped walks around the island, and you're just full of attractions on the island for tourists to come for eat, for lots to do for a weekend visit. And even now you've got lots of tourist accommodation between 2 B&Bs and now the self-catering cottages. And moving into the actual permanent homes, you currently have 20 permanent homes on the island. In terms of non-permanent homes, you've got 12 of them, and they're a mixture of holiday homes, reuse residential, vacant home, and a derelict home. And you even the reuse residential between the council house, the health centre, and the home office. So what we're doing here and discussing is just the kind of capacity you have currently on the island. And when you compare the permanent homes to the non-permanent homes, it's kind of like a 2/3 split currently between the 32 homes. And in that breakdown, you have between that, the majority are holiday homes for the non-permanent, and for those 62 inhabitants. It should be said, for many of those holiday homes, some of them don't have central heating, so are seasonal by default. They don't have the heating source to go through the winter with them. And Inishturk has many different jobs, and that's one thing that's very very clear when you go there, that a lot of people do multiple different jobs. So without saying, it would be remiss to mention that the sheep farming is the kind of bedrock of the island. And that has all the traditional sheep shearing that goes with it. You have your annual sheep show, and this is just incredible and I coming out from looking at the island, the fact that you graze the island, Cahir Island beside it. I know that happens as well for Inishturk as well. There's the bringing the sheep across in the boats to actually graze that island. And a little known fact, for the 62 people on the island of Inishturk, you have around 1,400 sheep. So for the 1,400 sheep, that works out at about 22.5 sheep per person on the island. The sheep are definitely the biggest population on the island. You have fishing between the catching fish, but also you have your lobster farming. And in terms of the lobster farming, just a location of where the lobster traps are currently located. It's around Cahir Island, Inishturk, and around Clare Island. So what we're trying to say is, here between the sheep farming and the fishing and lobster farming, you have lots of jobs in the kind of agricultural sectors, but you also have the rural support social scheme. You have teachers on the island, you have a nurse on the island, you have shops, you have retail, you have caretaking for different facilities, you have hospitality, community development, you have tourism, you have someone who manages the water, and someone who manages the electricity as well, and the digital nomads as well, for people that work now remotely for tech companies, etc. So Inishturk has many generalists, and so this leads to kind of thinking about Inishturk today. Is like Inishturk today is historic, it's natural, it's agricultural, it's connected, it's serviced, it's welcoming, it's communal, it's beautiful, and that goes without saying. It's absolutely gorgeous. Great weather the other day, Anna. And it's much more, and that's what we're here tonight to discuss. And in the workshop period, you'll be able to tell what Inishturk is, more about what Inishturk is to you, and how we can help explain that through the future vision. One thing, though, that stands above all is its resilience. It's had people living there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's withstand many, many shocks. But with that resilience, there also is a fragility. And that's another element of Inishturk's story. And it has endangered crafts, It had a loss of agricultural diversity, and this is an image of Inishturk when the cows used to be on the island. You might have seen in the 2014 vision they were talking about cheese and different things, but as the population decreased and the price of actually like servicing cattle went up, it didn't become economically viable for the cows to maintain on the island. So there's lots of agricultural diversity, seasonal work, and that's one thing that's been brought to our attention. The idea that I mentioned all those different jobs that Inishturk has, but when you actually exclude the seasonal, you start to see that there's a lot of elements and jobs that don't actually last the year, and that creates a certain level of fragility. A brain drain. A lot of young people aren't able to be supported with jobs when they finish high school. Fossil fuel dependent. And if you see currently, currently it's the green diesel that's powering the electricity on the island. If you compare that to the mainland mix between the dirty natural gas and the renewables, Inishturk is 100% on the fossil fuels. And it should be noted that the renewables on the mainland is growing quite rapidly at this period. It's not connected to the national grid, and that was something that we discovered during our our discovery period. So unlike Inishbofin and Clare Island, Inishturk was not linked into the national grid. It generates waste, which actually has to be then exported to other exported off the island. And this is an element of tonight's discussion, is like we are just merely looking at the islands from a kind of a desktop analysis and from discussions with Mary and the Inishturk Community Club. But this is the element of tonight with the workshop. We want to understand the other key challenges that you see on the island. And going back to this graph of talking about the population collapse at the famine period, you see, whereas when the shock hit the mainland, Ireland's population is now being on the trajectory of recovery. Inishturk's population is actually being on a slow decline. And as a result of this, we're now at 62 people on the island. And although we don't have the actual age breakdown, it's kind of it's not a scientific method. It's probably in the higher and older population that does remain on the island as well. This is another island next to Inishturk. Obviously, everyone's probably quite aware of it, Inishturk. And after that shock of the famine, it actually had a higher population than Inishturk. However, its fragility was kind of exacerbated, and it led to 1960 it being uninhabited. And that is a real issue that we don't want to see occur on Inishturk, but it is something that we should be cognizant of. If the population is maintained, there is the opportunity that this could happen to Inishturk. And this is why we show this image, because there has been so much investment on the island and development on the island. We obviously don't want that to occur. So, but it is important to be aware of that. And that is where the vision is. This is why we're creating this vision. It's like, where do we want Inishturk to move forward to in the next 20, 25 years, 30 years? And what if Inishturk experienced another shock? Would it have the resilience to withstand that previously, what's happened before? So this is where this visioning workshop begins, because currently in Inishturk in 2023, there's different options for the island. Like, what if the school closed? That would be a very big shock to the island, and that could precipitate a decrease to the population and potentially a bad outcome. What if it just continued its decline and we did nothing? And if you just draw a line that just alongside the population, you just see the decline of the population just moves currently to about 20 by 2050. What if Inishturk experienced a population revival? And that's what we're here to discuss tonight. Like we're kind of going, presuming that that's the kind of the feeling in the room that we wish to have a revival, but what does that actually look like? So there's different options, like in terms of maintaining, do we want to maintain the current population level for 2050? That could be a potential option. Do we want to move, like Ireland is almost at pre-famine population levels? Is that an option? Or do we want something in between? And that's again what we want to discuss tonight and hear your thoughts on, because that's a key factor in actually determining what kind of vision you want. Do you want to have a maintaining current population? Do you want to have a high growth, or do you want to have something in between? and what type of people would add to the community without taking from it. Because with that population, and we talked about the different generalists that arrive on the island, everyone contributes to island life. So when you do, greatly, if you do wish to increase your population, what kind of people do you want to come to the island? And we need a vision really to figure this out. So this is in terms of the 2050 vision, and this is what we're going to be discussing tonight. What scale of vision do we want to have? It's remiss of us to talk about the future trends that are currently happening and where that vision can fit within. So the idea of sustainable tourism, and the idea that not all tourism is sustainable, and this is an example of what's happening in Dingle, where it's one of the most popular locations in Ireland, but it's actually struggling to trickle down to the locals, and it's actually having quite an adverse effect on the environment of the area. The principle of people moving westward, that's a current trend, especially accelerated with the kind of digitization of the Irish economy and the service sector, and it's already been seen on Inishturk. Many people are digital nomads working for tech companies based even outside of Ireland, but can do it from a broadband connected island. The green economy and the whole idea of using that to create employment and jobs. Organic produce that's growing quite fast on the island as well. The idea of the slow food movement. The idea of the circular economy and the use of waste reduction. And the idea of sustainable products, and the idea of buying local is becoming a real driver, especially with millennials and Gen Z. And different ideas of the bioeconomy and Irish seaweed, and seeing maybe where Inishturk could fit within Ireland's growing bioeconomy. So, and this again tonight is what we want to discuss, this actually expansive thinking, what this vision could be and which way we want to go with this. It's an interesting thing, and thanks to Anne again for providing this from 2014 Community Futures, the Inishturk Island 2024 vision. We actually asked the kids to draw last week their vision for 2050 of Inishturk. And we had a lot of different sketches, but one was talking about a place where everyone can be housed, you know, a big house, the idea of that. And one other one that jumped out quite well was a saltwater jacuzzi and swimming pool. That was something that one of the children was thinking about. They might be there tonight, I don't know. And other islands are on their journeys, and like Inishturk is unique, but it's not unique in being an island. And islands are facing up to the future of what their kind of role is and how they can actually have sustainability. And one island, Scottish island called the Isle of Egg, similarly has took a vision, and it started in 2008, where it was looking at the whole idea of could it get energy independence, and it already has achieved that. And it's done that through a mixture of solar and wind, and as well as having an energy strategy, it's also had a waste strategy. So it's trying to see itself as all encompassing the kind of sustainability strategy for the island. And as a result of doing that, it's also a very attractive place to visit. So this is like from National Geographic. People want to go and have ecotourism experiences and go and see beautiful places that are living the kind of clean, beautiful life as they see. And like another example is Samsa in Denmark, a larger island, but it's also on its journey of trying to get to carbon neutrality. It's not there just yet, but it is getting there, and obviously pushing the renewables, and has a very strong community-backed vision. It also, all along this journey, this is an energy academy, so it's actually teaching other people from around the world how to transition to a low carbon economy. So there's even within the act of doing the vision is actually creating an economy for it. One that most people will not be aware of, this is up outside Enniskillen. It's called Inishturk. It's a funny one I thought about because of just the name of Inishturk. It was like this island is less than 1 kilometre squared, and it's totally inhabited by little black pigs. But the idea is that it's an island that's being reused in a way that's creating an organic local product, which is actually then being sold around the local area. And I'm presenting this as a vegetarian, by the way, as well. So I understand everyone's different, but that's and that could be something that Inishturk could look at. I try to pronounce this. There's a Greek island called Antikythera in Greece. 24 people on the island. How does it get families to come? It pays them to come, gives them a stipend, and the idea is by doing a stipend, it actually attracts people to come into the island, and it's actually like a loss leader, but it actually then justifies the services on the island and actually increases the viability of the island. So whereas there is a little bit of investment, it actually helps stimulate the economy going forward. It's really the idea of what all those projects are talking about is sustainability, and the 3 pillars of sustainability is really economic viability, social equity, and environmental protection. And sustainability is that sweet spot that lands in between. And this happened on Inishturk, and the idea of sustainability was key when thinking about development. And I think it was Mary on the island who this quote is attributed to. It's okay, come in and mine, but what are we left with afterwards? And this was the proposal to create a gold mine on Inishturk Island. And it was the story of like an external party coming in, trying to make a lot of money, but not giving back to the local community. And as a result, it was like mothballed and it was flatly rejected by the island because it wasn't sustainable. It may have been economically viable for some, but it wasn't socially equitable or protecting the environment for others. So any vision that we propose needs to be a way where it hits those 3 pillars of sustainability. And just finally, to finish, and I'll stop talking then, and we'll get into the actual workshop, is this idea of expansive thinking and this what if. So we've set out our stall of what we see Inishturk currently being, and we want to have your input on what that actually is. But what if Inishturk, and what if housing in Inishturk doubled by 2030? What would that look like? You know, what if Inishturk went the same way as Inishturk? What if Inishturk becomes a family-focused island? What if it diversified its agricultural base? What if it became a sustainable food producer? What if it fed its tourism industry? So this kind of idea of connecting to the dots. What if it achieved energy independence? And we talked about that previously with the reliance on green diesel. And referring back to one of the children who talked about the hot water jacuzzi, what happened if it used its excess renewable energy from the wind and builds a heated saltwater pool that could be used at night because it's lovely and warm, and because you need to use that excess energy from renewables? What if Inishturk's food was processed on the island? A big discussion was the fact that a lot of their sheep are exported away and then processed off the island, so you're losing that value add in the supply chain. What if we shared our traditional agricultural practices? Local materials became local products, or organic waste was turned into energy and fertilizer, or it became a digital working spot, or maybe we financially supported new families, or became a centre for natural heritage, referencing the corn crake, and became a leader for the future. So like, what if Inishturk took those ideas and actually put them together into a comprehensive vision? Farming, fishing, seaweed, sustainable food, sustainable products, zero waste, renewable energy. That would be an island I'd want to visit. And bringing the community together on that journey, and that's the challenge. And this is what we're trying to start tonight, is actually understand the problem and propose a vision that can work all together, really. So I'm going to start talking now and move to the first part of the workshop, but I might say we're going to begin now to talk about the Inishturk's vision together. And the workshop will take it's a bit tricky because it's hybrid, and I might take a brief pause in between, because I know Mary has almost the in-person kind of pen and the sheets to actually participate with the workshop. And the people online, I'm going to share Microsoft Forms with you. But the first part will be the challenges and opportunities for Inishturk. And the idea is to answer the following questions. It'll take 30 minutes, but we want you to work together to discuss this. And I'm counting the numbers of people on the call, and I think it would be probably good to have maybe online splitting it into 2 separate groups, because there is quite a lot of people there, maybe have about 4 or 5 in the group. But the key challenges and opportunities, so we want to ask the question, what do we love about Inishturk? What's most important to preserve for future generations? What are the biggest challenges facing Inishturk today? What kind of community do we want Inishturk to be in 2050? Would co-creating an Inishturk 2050 vision be helpful in achieving this? What opportunities are available to Inishturk that we haven't fully explored yet? What kind of Inishturk 2050 vision can we pursue that benefits both the island and its residents? and how can we work together as a community to achieve our vision for the future of Inishturk. So I'm going to stop talking now, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to do that. I'll try and unmute now and maybe try that now. But I know the group that are in with Mary in the Inishturk, the kind of center, could take out the sheets and try and organize themselves into a table and begin, Mary, like last time, answer those questions, and we will take half an hour for that, so we can work till about 8:20. But for the people online, we can create breakout rooms and we can answer those questions on a Microsoft Forms. So I'm going to stop sharing now, but then I'll reshare this in a moment. Is that okay, Mary?
That's perfect.
Yeah, and maybe this is the tricky moment where I'm going to try and do some technical whiz kind of stuff. So I think maybe the best thing is if Mary, if we get, I count around maybe about 10 or 12 people there. Maybe if we get two tables or that are working on answering these questions, that would be the most advantageous. But I'll hold up the page. I'll share the page. I'll stop